Hi, I'm Jen Matthew Sadler.
And I'm WIM Natasha Regan. Welcome to this game, which comes from the TCEC 18 Superfinal between Leela and Stockfish. This game is a Slav, and the TCEC book specified a risky fifth move for black, 5 f6. And Leela playing black, Stockfish playing white. Leela ended up playing quite a lot of pawn moves in the opening, taking some risks in order to make it awkward for white's pieces. And we end up with a position where Leela's still got the king in the centre, but quite a few of Stockfish's pieces are either trapped or on prise. Stockfish decides then to sacrifice 2 pieces in order to get an attack going. And both sides have managed to put their c-pawns far advanced into the opponent's positions. So we get a very exciting middle game, and it's highly tactical, with Leela's king still exposed and in the centre. Actually, Leela manages to exchange off some of the pieces and even exchange the queens. So it looks for a moment like black can survive. But at the crucial moment, Stockfish plays an amazing move that threatens either material gain or mate, and Stockfish must have calculated this way in advance.
Yeah, it is an absolutely superhuman game, this one. So let's have a look at it. So this is the position out of the TCEC book. I'll just show you how we got there. So d4, d5, c4, c6, knight f3, e6, the so-called triangle setup due to the shape of black's pawns. And there have been a couple of good books on this by a couple of Russian players, Ruslan Sherbakov and Mikhail Krasenkov, who now plays for Poland. But they're big experts in this and written some good books. So d takes c4. And now the normal Noteboom line is a4, a2 to a4, stopping b5, and well, there's some very sharp lines. I'll just show you because you might see some echoes of this later in the game. b5, bishop d2, a5, takes, takes, b takes, c takes b5, b3, bishop b7, b takes c4, b4, bishop b2, knight f6. And that is the Noteboom, named after a Dutch player, very promising young Dutch player who died very young in the 1920s. So this is a super sharp setup, and I had the misfortune or the pleasure, you can say, to lose a fantastic game against Mikhail Krasenkov with this, where he actually queened his A and B pawns. So incredibly thin. No, I think only one, but it felt like both. They both went down the board. Incredibly thematic, I have to say. So what the TCEC book specified was actually a move that's TCEC interesting as well. This is bishop g5. And now the last move of the TCEC book was a move that both Krasenkov and Sherbakov are very dubious about. It's the move f6. Bishop e7 is by far the most solid line for black, and it's pretty decent. But f6 is really quite dodgy. Why is that? Well, you can't put a knight to f6 anymore. The e6 pawn is weakened, and it really, I mean, if black loses the c4 pawn with this sort of structure, then I mean he's just got a horrible position. So it really puts a big onus on black to try and keep this pawn on c4, and it's not easy, especially with the pawn on f6 rather than the knight on f6, controlling the centre. So actually both engines in their games, both when Leela had white and here when Stockfish had white, they played bishop d2, which was the best move according to Krasenkov and Sherbakov. Alternatives, bishop h4 or bishop f4 is quite interesting as well. But bishop d2 is probably the best move. b5, and now Stockfish played a4 here. Leela played a very unusual move, played e4, which Sherbakov also mentioned. He said it was probably quite good for white as well. Actually, in this position, we got some sort of Noteboom typical position, as you'll see. Takes, c takes b5, knight h4, threatening queen h5 check, g6, b3 under.
Still just moving pawns.
Exactly, f5. I tweeted at this point that everyone was saying how much work had been done on Stockfish. I thought they'd introduced a move pawns only algorithm. So so d5, queen takes h4, and bishop takes h8. So yeah, as Natasha reminded me when we were talking about this, that always, whenever something like this happens, always mention the story about Julian Hodgson. The story about Julian Hodgson, who he once sacrificed an exchange like this against me in a wild position, and I asked him why he'd done it because I didn't think it was necessary. And he said, "Well, if I sacrifice it, I don't need to develop it afterwards, do I?" So that was a way of accelerating his kingside development, just giving away the rook on h8. But this is quite an amazing position after 15 moves. Only a queen and pawns have been moved for black, and we just go on a couple more moves. Move 17, b4, and you end up with a position with all of black's pieces on their initial squares, and only pawns have been moved. And amazingly, it's probably about equal, this position. Just certainly Stockfish managed to draw this as black against Leela, and in my engine games as well, then this was ending up as a draw. Not easy for black.
Every piece is on the 1st or the 8th rank.
Exactly. It's crazy position. But well, again, if you think this is crazy, then you'll wait till you see our main game. That just defies belief, I think. So after b5, a4 is actually a very natural move, just undermining that queen side. Black can't fix it now because if a6, I just take on b5, and a takes b5 allows rook a8. There are some lines in the Queen's Gambit accepted, and also in the Slav, I think, as well, where you sacrifice the exchange. But again, with this pawn on f6, it's black's development is never going to be that great. So black played b4, knight e4, and then this horrible positional move f5. But I mean, I think this is it's part of the. There's always such like a rolling stone gathering moss effect in these things, that you start with one weakness f6, and then in order to justify your position, you always end up having to make more weaknesses. And this is what Leela's doing. This knight on e4 is preventing black from playing c6 to c5, which is a freeing move to gain activity, and Leela wants that at all costs. So it'll just chase away the knight and give away an extra weakness here. So knight f6, e3, bishop a6, covering the c4 pawn, and now a very interesting move from Stockfish. There's one human game in this by the very strong Indian player Adiban against, I forget the name of his opponent. It was a slightly weaker player, and here black played c3. I had a lot of engine games with queen d5, queen c2. As you see, white's really aiming to get that pawn back as quickly as possible, and well, got some sharp games here. c3, takes, and then well, yeah, knight takes f1 was some games, and then the engines were trying to survive with queen c4. Was kind of working out. c4, queen b7, and then knight d7, and developing afterwards. Yeah, kind of working out. It feels very fraught all the time. Rook f1 was also quite dangerous. a5, c4, queen d7 was played. I don't know. I mean, white can play e3 to e4 or c6 to c5 and develop. I really do quite like this for white in principle, but it's not over. This move bishop e2 is very clever. Whoops. Because essentially white's saying, look, I've got a bishop e2 and castles. I've got two good developing moves, and then black's got to find some developing moves. But it could be that by developing, black actually reduces his ability to defend the pawn on c4. For example, if he plays bishop d6, then queen c2, you can no longer play queen d5 easily. So essentially, what you're hoping is that by keeping this tension in the position, white's going to force black to put his pieces on slightly more passive squares for developing, and then after he'll grab the c4 pawn and and black won't have any counterplay at all. So just sort of seeing that, Leela decides not to develop quietly, but to up the tension again and start striking at the white centre. This is very typical NN defence. I mean, we've seen it so often with AlphaZero, that when the position's bad, the NNs aren't just going to sit back and say, oh, okay, take a positional advantage. If they think there's a tactical way to get compensation with activity, then they'll really try and go for it. Well, I mean, Leela's generally more solid than AlphaZero, but just in this case as well, you see it really playing this sort of very aggressive NN defensive plan. So Stockfish took on c5, and now this move knight d7. Again, a quiet move like bishop c5. White plays, I think it was queen c1, and then, for example, castles, bishop e7. A position like this, e4 takes, and it's not
quite pleasant for white, though, I guess.
Yeah, this is very pleasant for white. I mean, it's defensible. I mean, my engines were, making some draws in these games, but again, a weak pawn here. These queenside pawns are quite weak. And for example, if you develop the knight comes into c6, rook to c1. These are quite typical for Slav, Queen's Gambit accepted, semi-Slavs. And I'm sure I've lost some sort of positions like this before in my career. So it is quite tricky. It's not really what Leela's looking for, this. So this move knight bd7 that Leela played is very ambitious. I mean, it's trying to transform this pawn on c4, which has been, the weakness. Once white gets that one, it's going to be good for white, into a strength, because this knight's coming round to c5. And then once it gets to c5, then this pawn on c4 is suddenly strong, giving the knight an outpost on b3 or d3. But it's again upping the tension another notch. So white played c6 here. Quite interesting, actually. It's often you often just leave black to take that pawn and then move on afterwards. But here Stockfish is keeping it, and this pawn actually takes up a crucial role in the game, because it stops the black king from escaping to d7. And
you can see that pawn's going to be quite annoying.
Yeah.
As in, black's going to always have to work around it.
Indeed. But
it takes the moves to try and take it off.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. Actually, it's very hard to attack, because after knight c5, white plays knight d4, and both defending the pawn on c6, and also possibly threatening knight b5 when the pawn can even move onto c7. So what does Leela do here? Well, I mean, there are many possibilities here, and I played loads of engine games with my engines, and some quite fascinating stuff. I mean, g6 was a very solid possibility, protecting the pawn on f5, and the idea is after castles, you're playing the move e5 just to drive away the knight from c2, from d4 rather, and yeah, not clear. There's a couple of moves. Knight b5 is possible. Knight b3, queen c2, takes, queen d2. Oh yeah, this was a very sharp variation here. Rook takes a7. Can you believe it? Rook a7, b6. This looks like a shogi game, not like a chess game, this.
The white pawns and the black pawns have kind of switched places.
Exactly. How has that happened? How have they got past each other? And there's a queen hanging as well, of course. White sacrificed a rook and a piece. In actual fact, this turns out to be, as always, a draw. Here, c7, takes. Yeah, that was a stunning engine game that I had. So that's quite amazing. Yeah. But again, I think what you notice in this is in this game, sort of Leela's idea of get a knight onto c5, make use of that pawn on c4, turn it into something strong. That really works out, albeit with quite astonishing tactics. Probably the best line was knight c2 for white in this position, and then c3, bishop a6, knight a6 takes b3. And, well, my engines were aiming for knight b4, knight c5. When, yeah, not easy to shake that black position. You've got rid of the white light square bishop. This bishop on d2 isn't so active. And, black can try and develop with bishop e7 and castles. Actually, the best line that my engines came up with was the move knight d4, takes. When white has only got, is it one pawn for the piece? But this pawn on b3 is probably going to go at some stage. You're also threatening queen e2 check with a fork on the knight on a6 and king on e8. And the black king still isn't castled. So in practice, this was turning out quite, yeah, not bad for white. I think I didn't have that many games, so I think certainly one game ended in a win for white. But I think that it's a pretty good fighting chance. It's certainly when you compare to the game, it's a bit less scary. There are other moves as well that were interesting. H5 is another idea. I can just show you that one. It's again, you'd maybe expect Leela to do this, but this was actually Stockfish that came up with this line in my engine games. And H3, G3, knight D5. Again, a total mess. The one thing, but there's quite an important move for white here, which is this move knight B5. And this blocks out the bishop on a6 and means that white will be able to take the pawn on c4. And this seemed to be turning out better for white again. And then I think there was also another interesting move, maybe even the best move, which was to play queen d5. And after castles, then knight d3. You're just trying to, to nail your pieces into the white position. And of course, if the light squared bishop disappears, white's light squared bishop, then it's not that easy to get at the black queen. I think this was maybe the best line. If black can get away with this, then this was probably the best line. But Leela did something incredible here. Really decided to up the stakes once more and played f4 again. Just keeps on going. So this move f5, early on, then this knight bd7. And now this move f4. Well, e takes f4 allows knight d4, allows queen takes d4 rather. So knight h5 was played, and now the key to it, knight e4. So and after white castles, black plays e5, and this is the enormous climax to the game really, because so the knight on d4 is hanging. The knight on h5 is trapped in actual fact, so g6 will win it. And the bishop on d2 is also attacked by the knight. So, when the knight moves, then the queen and knight will be combining against the knight on d2. And it really is not easy to find, your way through this variation. But Stockfish certainly does and plays an extraordinarily powerful tactical sequence now. And
lots of white's pieces are in trouble, and I suppose one of black's pieces is in trouble, which is the king, because it's kind of stuck there with its queen one side, its bishop the other, both preventing it from castling.
Exactly, and yet it's got the square f7, so it's not completely restricted. It's I don't know. I mean, it's certainly not clear to me that this should be winning for white. But how Stockfish plays it just looks to be almost mathematically winning. So bishop b4 was Stockfish's move, sacrificing the first piece. E takes d4, and knight takes f4. So you've got two pieces out of attack, bishop b4 and knight h5, which was obviously trapped on the side. And both pieces have been redeployed actively. The bishop's attacking this knight, and the knight's aiming for this e6 square. And white has got one big threat, which is e takes d4, opening up the e-file. But black seems to have a lot of resources. So, what on earth? Why would this be so bad for black? Well, d3 was the move that obviously that I was looking at first of all. And now white's got this extraordinary idea, bishop h5 check. It's amazing white's really coming in, through the sides like this. And after g6, you just take, and bishop g6. Now this pawn on c6 is extremely handy. The king can't go to d7, so the king has to go to e7. But now you'll notice that the knight on c5 is pinned. So actually bishop takes e4 would be possible because the knight can't recapture. And then that's only one piece for white. But Stockfish plays an even more powerful move, which is queen f3, looking to come into f7 and also looking to take the knight with the queen.
So at the moment it's what, 2 pieces for 4 pawns?
Exactly. So how does Stockfish play here? King d6. King d6 was what I was getting in my engine game. So the king just running basically. Queen takes e4, and now some amazing ideas where essentially, I mean, white has to have seen a number of extremely unusual tactical points to make this work. Otherwise it's just not doing anything. I mean, I actually thought, my goodness, but isn't just queen h4 good for black? But threatening the queen on e4 and threatening queen h2 mate, which it seems incredibly difficult to deal with. But there we are. Stockfish plays f4. And it turns out that, we'll see it later, but after queen h2, check, king f3, black has got no more checks. This bishop on g6 is covering it, and then it's going to be white's turn to start an attack, starting with moves like queen e5 check, or queen d4, or moves like that. So the engine games continued, rook d8. And now this incredibly surprising move, and this was the tactical stuff that I hadn't seen at all. Takes and then b4. So if you take that with the king, then we're opening up the b file for the white rooks. That's going to be killing. If you take like this, then we do the same with the c file, which is also going to be killing. We play c7. The queen comes into c6. But black can also play the move king b6, and keep the white king b6, white pawns as a shield in front. But this move, and this comes up in all sorts of variations, it's really one of the key ideas that you had to have seen, I don't know, 10, 11 moves ago. It's this move queen e5. The problem is that the threat of queen a5 check is enormous. When after king c6 you go queen takes a6 check, and you gain all your material back, and the black king is still completely open. You've also got ideas like b5 and a5 as well. If bishop b4, rook b1, and the b file is open, you won't be able to defend that bishop, and the king is completely in the way. And we've got our checks, of course, again. And after this, there's nothing more black can do. The white king is completely safe. But I mean, just the number of tactical points that you need to have evaluated correctly is just amazing, absolutely amazing. I mean, queen b6 is another idea, and then again a sequence that's kind of hard to understand. We're getting rid of the knight. We've moved the king onto c6, so bishop e4 check, picking up the rook on a8 is a very big threat. Bishop takes c5, bishop check, queen f7. The king's still very unpleasantly placed. Queen d5 check is always going to be a powerful answer if the white queen gets chased away. And now a5, queen b5. You can't. I mean, you've got to watch out very much where you put your king. For example, if I go queen c7, I can go check, king there. We're threatening mate on h2, but bishop f5 check is very powerful. The king has to move back, and then we've got queen takes h8, and queen takes a8 for good measure as well afterwards. I mean, I don't fully understand it, to be honest. I mean, how do all these tactics, work like this? But they do. They really do. Queen b5, and then this move, b4 or b3, I think. b3, that was the one. And we're just threatening, again, to play probably queen d5, b takes c4, and then the rook will get to the d file. Let me have a look. What did I see in my engine games? Rook d8, b takes c4, queen takes c4, queen f4, rook c1. Again, the black queen is getting hit, but d2. you think all of a sudden rook takes c4, d1 queen is going to win for black. But astonishingly, queen g5 check, bishop g6 check, bishop f5 check. I mean, for a human, this is just not possible to calculate. You can't calculate this number of forced checks like this. So if you go to the back rank, then the rook drops. If you go to the d file, this is the point of white's play, then you can just take the queen because d1 queen is no longer an idea. And if you play queen f7, queen e5 check, again, it's this similar tactic that we saw earlier, this combination of queen and bishop, and forcing black pieces, you know, to take up escape squares. The only move that black's got is king f8 and then queen h8 check. And this is rather cruel, actually. You also take the bishop with check as well. So, I mean, it's quite amazing all these sequences that this combination of queen and bishop, you know, actually almost facing a whole black army, is just enough to, you know, to win material decisively. So, so that's d3. I mean, that's why d3 is not working. Really incredible and unexpected. Another thing that I liked very much was this move. Rook b8 was what Leela played in the game. Queen f6 was another interesting defensive idea. And again, it's not obvious at all why this should be good for white. Queen takes c6, getting rid of that dangerous pawn. This check as well, and then queen d4. So we've got some slight problems here for the rook on h8, rook g8. And then again, this exchange seems to be such a key idea and completely unnatural to me. I mean, you think this is a strong bishop putting pressure on the black position. Why would you give up a bishop for a knight like that? But the bishop goes to f3, castles, and rook d1. And this is one of those positions in which, yeah, black's pieces are very vulnerable tactically. For example, there's, you know, knight e7 check or stuff like that. But it's very hard to find better places to put them, so you've just got to hang on in there and hope nothing wins. What is white's plan? White's going to play rook c1 probably, and b1 pool. Let's have a look. Did I have any variations like that? I don't think I had any variations like that. Maybe no, I don't think so. But anyway, if white just sort of if black just sort of waits, then white plays rook c1 and b4 and just opens up the position. So bishop d6 was a line that appealed to me greatly because, again, I didn't understand why would this be dangerous for black. The engine goes knight b4, queen c7. Yeah, bishop h2. We go. We play the move king h2, queen c7, and queen f4, blocking like that. Then white is well, actually a pawn up in the endgame.
Hard to keep track, isn't it, of the score?
Yeah, a pawn up in the endgame. That's the one. But I thought, well, why can't black play just queen c7? You know, keep that in reserve. Then you notice that there's a very important reason why the rook had to be forced to g8. Because you go queen g4 check, rook d7. If king b8, we've got knight c6 check, which is horrific. So rook d7, and then takes, and this gorgeous move, rook d6. You can't take because you're pinned, and if queen d6, queen c4 check picks up the rook on g8 with a fork to the king on c8. So many specific tactics that, you know, depend on tiny incidental details, but yeah, try and find a way for black to properly deviate. Very, very hard. Certainly my engines haven't found it in the engine games, nor have my engines after, you know, many 6-hour sessions of analysis. It just seems to be good for white. So Leela played rook b8, which was interesting move. Just or trying to get rid of that bishop on b4 as quickly as possible, and or try and cut out this pressure along c5 as quickly as possible. Well, Stockfish just sacrifices that second piece, gives it away, and plays rook e1. A quiet move after sacrificing a second piece. But obviously, white's teeing up now. I mean, the bishop can come to h5 with check. We've got d takes c5 picking up a piece, and this knight on e4 is going to be very, very loose. So, yeah, difficult position for black. What did black do here? Black played bishop e7. Very natural, just covering the e file and preparing to castle. So bishop h5 check from Stockfish, g6.
Stockfish doesn't want Leela to castle.
And then d takes c5. So, you know, before you took back a piece, you made sure that another one of your pieces was en prise. So this pawn on h5. And again, I mean, does this look so astonishingly dangerous for black? I don't know, really. It's not obvious to me. You know, if I was playing this with white, it wouldn't be obvious to me that this is...
You might, if you're black, you might just think, oh yeah, I'm material up now.
Yeah, exactly.
Consolidate.
Consolidate now and reel in the win. But, you know, Stockfish is at +8, is at +8 or something. It's just absolutely incredible. So, yeah, a few things were tried in my engine games. So castles was one of the things. Rook takes e4. And if g takes h5, just queen takes h5 here. Rook b2, rook d1. I find it quite amazing, actually. You know, all these. You feel that there's some very weak back ranks for white, but black never seems to be able to exploit it. Here, queen e5, hitting the bishop on e7 and the rook on b2, and this is just well, again, white's going to pick up this. This bishop on e7, or play knight e6 or knight h5. I mean, just huge kingside attack threats. So Leela plays the very sensible move here, queen d1, rook d1. And now there's a big white threat of playing knight d5 here. So Leela plays the move knight f6 to cover it. Yeah, if you play knight takes c5, for example, then knight d5 is very strong, attacking the rook on b4 and the bishop on e7. C3 was another idea, opening up the line of the rook on b4, defending the knight on e4. But then there's this sequence here, rook there, and bishop e2, pinning the rook on c4 to the bishop on a6. I mean, you're threatening just loads of threats, even knight c7 takes a6. And this was one of my engine games, takes, c2, rook c1. The knight on d5 is hanging, but the knight on e4 as well. But Stockfish doesn't even bother. And after here, c7. That pawn on c6 that Natasha said was going to be so important turns out to be crucial. And white queens rather, and decisively wins material. So, but Leela played another very sensible move, knight f6, covering the knight d5 threat. And again, it doesn't seem that easy, you know, to proceed here with white. I mean, king f7 is the next move, and well, you're still a piece up. But of course, in this game, the answer is always to sacrifice another one. Takes, knight takes, threatening.
Wait, he hasn't actually exchanged off any pieces at all.
No, he's just sacrificed them all.
In sacrifices.
Yeah, he's now got 1, 2. He's got 5 pawns. 5 pawns for the piece. Is that right? Yeah, that's right. So you actually got a big threat here, which is rook takes e7 check and rook d8 mate. Oh, no, sorry, actually, rook takes e7 check. Sorry, it's already mate, actually. So, I mean, that's a big threat. But you go rook h7, and I do have to confess that even at this point, I mean, I could see Stockfish's evaluation, but I thought, what is this? This doesn't look, you know, this doesn't look winning at all. You know, maybe white's got enough compensation for a draw or something, but never winning. But white's next move is incredibly powerful. This is rook d6. And essentially, you know, this is the move that you needed to see probably 12 or 13 moves ago to make this work. If you didn't have it, then it wouldn't be anything. What is the problem with this move for black? Well, this rook d6 threatens rook takes f6 because the bishop on e7 is pinned, and the follow-up is rook f8 mate. So there's big threats once this is coming in. Now there's another very big threat. You'd think maybe, you know, can white play a move like rook f7, for example, and you know, try and if rook f6, rook f6, rook e7, king d8. But actually, I think that white can simply play this move c7. And there's well, a couple of
rook d8 mate.
Exactly, rook d8 mate is a threat, as well as rook takes a6, when the c8 queen will be coming in. Astonishingly powerful move, this c7, and just seems to win. a move like king f7, we just calmly take the pawn on e7, and sorry, the bishop on e7, and you're just threatening c7 again with the same threats against the bishop on a6. And well, you've got quite a few pawns, so if you manage to win another piece now, then you're just going to be massive pawns up. So Leela played again by far the most obvious move, or by far the most challenging move, knight e4, rook e4, rook b2. And well, as Natasha mentioned, now black c-pawn is going to get rolling. I mean, Stockfish is already relaxing.
You mustn't allow a back rank mace either.
You mustn't. I mean, Stockfish is already relaxing here, confident in the knowledge that he's just winning. You know, and everyone else is saying, well, you know, it still looks very sharp. f4 was played in some of my engine games, which also seems very strong, but h3 was what Stockfish played in this game. c3, and then this quiet, calm move, rook f6, threatening rook f8 mate. King d8, knight takes c7. Rook takes c7 and rook f8 check, and the rook is not cannot be defended anymore, and white's taking it with check. However, this pawn on c3 still looks like something of a monster, really. So how are you going to deal with that one? Well, quite easily. Rook f6 check, king d5. Obviously, if you go king c5, then rook c7 check will get behind it, and then you can take this pawn on this bishop on a6 rather. So black plays king d5, and now rook e3, rook b1 check, c2, and rook c3. And as if by magic, white has managed to attack the pawn on c2, and also he's still attacking the bishop on a6. So obviously c1 queen, you just simply play rook c1, and rook takes a6, and rook takes a6.
And you're lots of pawns up.
Lots of pawns up. I mean, Stockfish, sorry, Leela tries bishop d3, but rook d6 check, rook takes d3, leads to the same scenario there. And after rook f7 takes g4, Leela played king d5, and then it was resignable. And the game ended here because the evaluations for both sides were so high. There we are. I mean, I hope you enjoyed this game. I can't think that you could have done anything else, to be honest. It is frankly one of the most stunning tactical games I've ever seen. I think, you know, what Leela did, I think was pretty much in accordance with the position. I mean, you know, you've played a risky opening. In order to justify it, you're having to put extra risks on top. I mean, maybe Leela just over-egged it slightly, but it looked like a very good idea. But the astonishing tactics that, you know, that make this whole thing hang together with, you know, regularly multiple piece sacrifices, you know, quiet moves, and then, you know, every single attacking line, you seem to have to give up even more pieces just to give, you know, to keep your attack going. And then this phenomenal move at the end, rook d6, which I think only Stockfish sees. I don't think anything else in the world can see a move like this far in advance. You know, really was a quite amazing game from Stockfish. And yeah, I mean, you know, there was in the chat there were some complaints that you know, because obviously Stockfish started the match very, very well, got to +3, even +4. And some worries about, you know, was Leela in tip-top condition? Was Leela really in top shape there? But, you know, I think you've also got to give, you know, the opponent its due and say that with this level of play and this level of tactical skill, you're always going to lose some games. You're never going to be able to keep a monster like this at bay for 100 games. Absolutely impossible, I think. And
yeah. And as of today, 25th of June, Leela's pulled it back, so it's now. I think it was pulled back to within 1 point. But
exactly, yeah.
Back at 2 points.
Exactly. But some amazing games. I mean, really, this is I think the best TCEC season I've ever seen. You know, quality of games, thrills and spills, and everything. It really is amazing. I thought season 17 couldn't be bettered, but this has gone another level up. So, well, I mean, first of all, well done to all the TCEC guys. Well done to the opening guy, Jeroen Nomen, who's given us some great openings to look at. And well, please, keep on watching the TCC and keep on watching our channel because, well, we've just got an embarrassment of riches, really. We'll try and do as many as possible, but I'd almost like to cover all 100, but I don't think we can do this with a full-time job as well. So we'll just try and pick out the absolute
engine analysis you do.
Exactly.
For each game.
Yeah, no, it's a lot of work. Yes.
Fire out your engines.
Exactly. So, but we'll try and pick out the highlights. We'll try highlights and the absolute highlights, and well, keep on. And I'm sure other YouTubers will do lots of games as well. So keep on watching. If you haven't subscribed,
please subscribe.
Exactly.
And you'll be notified of all our latest videos.
Exactly. And if you haven't looked at Game Changer yet, please do. There's masses of wonderful games just like this. That's the reason we got into computer chess, just the wonderful games between Stockfish and AlphaZero. And otherwise, keep well, keep safe, and keep on watching.
Thank you for watching.
Thanks for watching.